Welcome to DepEd Cavite, our first divisional research training. So our topic for this day is about data collection process. And I'm your facilitator, Neill Tirona, a master teacher one from Bendita National High School. And of course, my co-facilitator, Miss Emelia R. Pastorin, a teacher 3 from Tua Elementary School. So we are the Magallanes team. So let's proceed to our terminal objective. At the end of the session, the participants shall be able to employ or practice appropriate data collection techniques and processes based on the research design. And for our enabling objective, we are going to discuss and compare the data collection processes used in quantitative and qualitative research. And of course, share experiences about the data collection procedures as researchers. Reflect on one's practice and employ applicable data collection methods. So, in understanding the data gathering procedure, we can make the researcher foresee the viability or early success of the study, and at the same time, could provide a place to start regardless of whether the research study is quantitative or qualitative. And according to Graciano and Rollin, as cited by Carage, Castolo, and Naval, 2009, every research pursuit would have been an unknown track without data gathering procedure, and the researcher would have to reinvent the wheel. It means we don't have direction or the point where we actually achieve on a research quest. So, before we go on further, we are going to deal first with, of course, what is the data collection? What is the point of data collection? Data collection is a method used to collect or acquire information that will help researchers to make informed decisions about the study being conducted. That is according to Carage et al. 2009. So it means it boils down to, of course, the informed decision. Okay? In order for us to have this informed decision, we should have accurate data based on the research study that we are actually conducting. So according to DepEd Order 43 series of 2015, it is a procedure to be followed and instrument to be used in gathering data for a study. So actually the gist here, without the data collection or the data per se, you won't be able to have conclusion or recommendation for our study. So before we could actually never have the research process with its culmination. So what are the tools and instrument for the data or data type? So we have three types of data type. We have quantitative, qualitative, and mixed. However, the basic data type is actually qualitative and quantitative. So for the tool that we're going to use or instrument that we're going to use for quantitative, we have surveys, tests, checklists, quizzes, and the likes. And of course, for qualitative, the example for the tools that we're going to use or the instrument in interview guide or questions, observation guide, and or notes, documents, artifacts, photos, and videos that we could deduce actually qualitative data or qualitative information. So of course, mix. Actually, you would be able to use both of the instrument. Of course, based on the study or the research design that you're going to employ on your research. So that is for our head start. Next, so we have several methods uh, to be presented. For a head start, an overview of the methods used in data collection, we have presented the commonly methods as mentioned by Badari 2020 and could be employed for basic researches. So, and these are, of course, number one, experiment to test the causal relationship and how to collect the data. So, by manipulating variables and measure their effects on each other. So that is experiment. So we actually use that with controlled and experimental groups that we are setting. And for survey, to understand the general characteristics or opinions of the people or group of people. So how do we collect the data? Distribute a list of questions to a sample online, in person, or over the phone. So what else? We have interview, focus group discussion. So how do we use that? So gain an in-depth understanding of perception or opinion on the topic. So we can collect that through verbally asking participants an open-ended questions or an open-ended question in individual interviews or focus group discussions. So as for observation, it is actually to understand something or in its natural setting. So measures or survey a sample without trying to affect them. So that is how we're going to collect data from an observation. So we're trying to measure or survey a sample without trying to affect them. However, if you are a participant, you would be able to actually be in the situation or activity, of course. So we're going to discuss that further. So next is, of course, ethnography. When we say ethnography, we're actually talking about culture. So to study the culture of a community or organization. And how are we going to collect the data? Of course, we are going to join and participate in the community and records your observations and reflections. So we also have archival research. This one is for um, historical or current events to understand the current or historical events, conditions, or practices. So we can get or collect the data through unaccessed manuscripts, documents, or records from libraries, depositories, or the our very known internet. Okay. So preparing for data collection procedure. So when the researcher has decided methods to be used, it is important to plan and manage the data to be collected. Basically, information management is very important in data collection because this would provide avenue for protection and ethical consideration of information such as privacy and confidentiality. This also promotes efficient and effective handling of data for analysis and interpretation. So that's why we should prepare the data collection procedure. So now, we have to focus on the commonly used um, data collection method in basic research. Of course, to start with, the observation procedure. Basically, observation is a collection of primary data or first-hand information. So, observation is a collection of primary data or first-hand information. So, next. On this procedure, as researchers, we could utilize these types of or observational methods. First is the structured. Technically, we follow protocols or rules, and on the other hand, um, when we are using actually unstructured, it is taking a look and see approach. So the next one is what we call the covert or in disguise observation. No one knows they are being observed, and the observer is concealed. For example, a researcher trying to understand the rituals and ceremonies of Hindu, um, for example, weddings. He or she may conceal himself as a guest to observe what's happening inside. When we say um, overt, it means um, the disguised observation. Everyone knows that they are being observed. For example, a researcher on Hindu weddings may explain his study or her study to the wedding party and use a video camera to record the wedding. So that is for the overt. So we have types of observational methods. So the first one is structured, unstructured, covert, and overt. So you can choose now the method or procedure of data collection uh, under observation. The observation roles. The researcher should also make consideration on his or her interaction with his or her participant and aware about the prevailing issues in the research site, such as ethnicity, culture, and belief. Next is the researcher as a participant. It means he or she assumes the role of inside observer who actually engages in the activities of the study and carries out the design and purpose of the research. And lastly, on a non-participant role, the researcher observer has less access to the actual actual experience. In conclusion, whether a non-participant or a participant role, the observer should make it to its advantage. Guides in observation procedure. There are several observation guides that were presented by Young, as cited by Karage et al. 2009. And these are the following. Number one, formulate definite objectives of study, rather group haphazardly without goal. So it means planning or setting objectives is more effective to systematize, of course, the procedure of the data collection procedure. The next, observe the larger setting within which specific act occur. So we should look um, actually on a bigger picture um, in order for us to effectively act on a specific context. Describe the character of the social atmosphere of observed situation adequately. So the next one, examine observations within the general context of a particular study. Use observation as a careful planned technique instead of resorting to a chance, random, and inconsistent procedure. Make sure that there is no evidence of bias in the recorded data. Do not rely on memory and recall after a risky delay. So, recording in an observation or preparing an observation notes um, actually is very important in order for us to have an accurate data collection. Guides in observation procedure. Compare observations with those of other mature observers. So we need to share notes and with mature observers in order for us to have additional tips or additional knowledge for the process. We need to integrate observational techniques with other suitable exploratory techniques in the research process. So, observation protocol procedure. So, this one is actually an example of observation protocol, and this is divided into descriptive notes and reflective notes. So, the descriptive notes is the description of the actual observation and your reflection about it. So, questionnaire preparation. Questionnaires or opinionaires are commonly used for descriptive survey research study. So, questionnaire is a formalized schedule for collecting data from respondents. It is well accepted and most commonly used data collection method. Questionnaire preparation. A questionnaire is used to inquire the opinions and attitude of a group. Next is to ensure information from varied and widely scattered sources. When the researcher cannot personally and readily see all the selected respondents, um, it is also used in the desired information be obtained from people. So we also have several types of questions. We have open-ended questions, multiple choice, closed questions. So to discuss further, open-ended question simply means that the respondents could express and elaborate opinion, while close-ended questions are provided with a number of possible answers and the respondents could select according to his or her preference of choice. Lastly, as compared to close-ended, multiple choice questions require uh, the respondents to select an answer from a list provided and allowed to choose several options. Based on the aforementioned types of questions, you would be able to use them according to the necessary or the necessity and purpose of the study, and the data types such as qualitative and quantitative data. So in creating original questionnaire, the researcher should be familiarized with essential components of questionnaire. According to Keener, as cited by Karage, 2009, a questionnaire has 5 components, and this consists uh, number one, identification data. It is the respondent's name, address, and phone number, which is sought for communication. Second is a request for cooperation, which an opening statement designed to enlist the respondent's help um, on the study being conducted by presenting purpose and time requirements. Third is instructions, which means or comments to the respondents on how to use the question. The fourth one is the information sought that pertains to the major part of the questionnaire, the needed information for the study. And finally, the classification data, the demographic profile of the respondent. Questionnaire as part of the survey method or descriptive research design, there are stages to be followed. And these are operationalization, turning abstract conceptual ideas into measurable information such as scaling. Next is sampling. It is obtaining data systematically such as sample size, accessibility of the sample, and time frame of data collection. And also the standardizing procedure. It is undergoing phase or content validity and reliability process that involves pilot testing and reliability tests such as Cronbach alpha test. This is followed by creating management plan, which is needed to organize and store data for efficient use or pull-up. Here, we could use Excel application or even columnar journal for data sorting in preparation for analysis. Finally, the implementation proper, which could choose applicable approach even during this new normal. We could use Google Form and email. Now I'm going to show you the instrument that I have used previously on our research cycle. So my questionnaire is entitled Canteen Management Efficacy. The first part is, of course, the personal data. And the second part is the perception on canteen management performance. Now, I'm going to turn you over with my partner on this segment. So I would like to present to you Ma'am Emily Pastorin to discuss the qualitative data collection approach.
Thank you, sir. The assigned topic for me is interview. So before that, when we say qualitative research, it is a type of research where we cannot use numbers, as we all know, but it is more on focusing on experiences and self-reflective nature of the studies. So when we are conducting interview, this method is typically used for qualitative data and is defined as verbal interaction between a researcher and an interviewee where a series of questions are used. In using data collection, the researcher meets the respondents face-to-face to ask questions and gather information of what is being sought for. Types of interview. Typically, we conduct interview face-to-face in order to see the emotion and facial expression of the respondents. However, during this time, we could have an alternative option such as Google Meet and Zoom. We have several types of interview process to choose from that would technically suit the application of our data collection process. Procedures in an interview. As cited by Carage et al. 2009, Sanchez and Castolo break down lists of steps in an interview, such as preparatory state, setting, establishing rapport at the outset, carrying the interview forward, recording the interview, and closing the interview. Qualitative design. So this is the example of instrument interview question. Data collection in 5 approaches, such as narrative, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, and case study. Okay, so I am going to discuss to you the data collection in 5 approaches. When you first step, the localizing site or individual. In the narrative, we are going to use singular individual. The participants here are accessible and distinctive. For the phenomenology, we are going to search or look for multiple individuals who experience the phenomenon. And for the grounded theory, we are also using multiple individual. For the ethno, we are going to search or look for the member of a culture or a group. Case study, their size or individual is bounded with the system, for example, process, program, events. So, doon nakapokus yung case study and ethnography. But for the circle number 2, which is gaining access and making rapport. For the narrative, you are going to gain the rapport by permission from the individual to obtain the information. Sa peno naman, you are going to look or find people who have an experience with the phenomenon. For the grounded theory, you are going to locate a homogeneous sample. And in the ethnography, gaining access through gatekeeper. When you say gatekeeper, it is a confidence of the respondent or the participants, and as well as in the case study. For the step number 3, how does one select site or individual, which is the purposefully sampling? For the narrative approaches, we use several strategies depending on the person. For the phenology, we are going to look or find individuals who have an experience on the phenomenon, which is what they call this as a criterion sample. For the grounded theory, we are going to find or look homogeneous sample since it is a theory-based sample or theoretical sample. For the ethnography, we are going to find or look for the cultural group, like for example, a group of Mangyan or group of Badiao, who is a stranger or a representative sample. For the case study, you are going to use as well a cultural group. Same thing with the ethnography. And for the step 4, what type of information typically is collected? For the narrative, documents or archival materials. We can also use open-ended questionnaire or interview or casual chatting. For the peno, of course, we have to use interview with 5 to 25 person only. And for the grounded theory naman, we are going to primarily interview 20 to 30. Mas higher po itong sa grounded theory. We can interview 20 to 30 person to achieve the details in the theory. For the ethnography, participants' observations, interview, or artifacts or documents. And in the case study, extensive forms such as document, records, and interview. Okay, for the 5th step, how information is recorded. Sa narrative, we are going to use notes, interview, or protocol. For the peno, interview or the multiple interview with the same individual. While in the grounded theory, we are using interview, protocols, and memoing. Let's say, for example, when you say memoing, we have DepEd orders, we have what we call a basis from the theory or the law. And in ethnography, we are just using field notes, interview, and observational protocol. And same thing with the case study. Okay, 6th step, what are the common data collection issues or the field issues? In the narrative approaches, we have to access the materials and the authenticity of the account and materials. Siyempre, kailangan natin dito yung confidentiality of the records. So, same thing with the other approaches. However, in the phenomenology, we use bracketing one's experiences, because we are going to make a team out of the transcription. Logistic of interview is also used in this sixth step rather. In the grounded theory, we use field issues, example, logistic, openness, something like that. And in the ethnography, we use field issues like reflexibility, sensitivity, divulging private information. And for the case study, interviewing and in observation issues or observing issues. Okay. And for the last step, which is how information is typically stored. For the narrative, we are going to use file folders, computer files, or we can use now the Google Drive, as well as in the PENO and grounded ethno and case study. However, in the phenomenology and grounded theory, you are going to keep or store through transcription and the computer files. For the ethno and case study, we are just going to store it through the field notes and transcription for as well as the computer files. So, here is the complete flowchart of the 5 approaches using the data collection cycle of Creswell. Okay, to end with this, a data collection process for qualitative research in a new normal education system is really challenging one, since it is basically conducted through face-to-face interview and community immersion. We all know that researchers should be flexible and adaptive nowadays for us to sustain and make a big leap in the field of research. So according to Alexander Pope, a little learning is dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Korean spring. Thank you and God bless.